We're at 12:01.
Okay,
Say we get started.
that sounds
Welcome,
good.
everyone. For those of you that may be new, Sean Naylor from the state of Vermont. Currently work part-time for the agency Digital Services on cybersecurity efforts for critical infrastructure and municipalities. With me today, primarily, we have a team, but David Kaiser, if you want to introduce yourself.
Afternoon. I'm Dave Kaiser. I am the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for the state of Vermont.
Thank you, David. And Kerwin.
Hello, I'm Kerwin Gaines. I'm one of the SLCGP coordinators for the state of Vermont. I may have reached out to some of you via initial phone calls. I'm glad that you've made it and look forward to working with you.
Excellent. And I'm going to post to Tabby Friedman's question about the videos, at least the ready site for the SLCGP. That's where more information will be, including the videos once they're uploaded. There is an older video there from the first round of projects if you are interested. So this week we're talking about, this is third in a series of 4 webinars. This week we're talking about starting to get more technical in cybersecurity, and that is building your defenses around your perimeter and identity. So that's what we're going to get into today. This is like phase 2 of your journey from beginning to a relatively mature cyber organization from a cybersecurity perspective. So let's move forward, Kerwin. Beep. Excellent. All right. So phase 2, hardening the perimeter and identity. This is one of those that, as we talk about the core elements that make up this phase, really account for a lot of the most common risks and exposure that organizations can have, and it addresses those. Like it says here, we try to keep this focused on just practical things that can make it harder for the bad guys to get at our systems, right? The harder it is, the more costly it is for them. The more costly it is, the quicker they get deterred and move on to someone else. And so what we're trying to do is make it so it is either time consuming or expensive, and then they move on to try and find somebody else. So, David, anything to add on before we dive in a little deeper?
Oh, you're playing with one of my favorite formulas, right? Risk equals threat, vulnerability, and impact. And this gets at reducing vulnerability and potentially reducing threat, maybe. We'll see.
Yes. Or, yeah. Yep. Excellent. So go ahead, Kerwin. Let's move forward.
Sean, just a heads up, since you started talking, we had about 6 people join.
Oh,
it looks like more are coming in. Just
excellent.
giving you a heads
everyone.
up.
Yep. Again, welcome. We can recap anything, but we're just getting started, so you haven't missed anything. So as we've worked through this webinar series, it's based on a document, some guidance that we have built here at the state just for this, to help organizations kind of have a roadmap to make progress, because often it looks like, I think it can look like, it can be overwhelming, and figuring out where's the first place to, if you only have $1 to spend, where's the best place to spend that dollar to help secure your environment. That's what it's based on. So phase 1 was really no cost or low cost things. We talked about, and recap quickly, right? We talked about designating a cyber leader, right? Somebody who's just going to have it as part of their domain, one of the many hats they end up wearing, but that's just thinking about it routinely to make sure things progress. Next is an asset inventory. You have to know what you have in order to protect it. If you don't know what you have, then that's like your biggest risk. So just understanding, starting it. I mean, fundamentals can be like an Excel file or something like that, that inventory stuff. And then third for phase one was the development of policies, right? So this is like you have policies for staff, right? You have policies around how the organization conducts certain types of business, expectations for employees, those types of things. This is policies around technology. What is acceptable use? What is permissible? What isn't permissible? What do you expect of vendors? Those types of things. So that's and again, they are relatively low cost items to address. Now we're getting into some technological areas that do carry with them a price tag. Sometimes it's not very expensive, right? Multi-factor authentication, you can start with using authenticator apps, and I think many of them, like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, are I think free to use. I don't even think there's a charge for them. Any cost might be in implementing them on your systems. But the next is vulnerability management, right? This is I sometimes struggle that I think that we phrase this too technically. The reality is this is making sure your systems get patched timely, right? Microsoft, Apple, whatever you use for systems, they release patches and updates frequently to keep your system. As soon as they find out about something, they will address it, and then it's incumbent upon you to make sure that those get pulled down and applied routinely to help ensure that the known risks are no longer a risk to you, known vulnerabilities. Then perimeter security. This is where we start to get more technical, right? We start talking about firewalls. We start talking about email filtering. We look at some different things that can help with building a little bit of a digital fence around your environment, just another layer of protection. And then the last one that's plugged in here is, this is specific to local municipalities, but getting on a .gov domain, right? So instead of using Naylorville.org or Naylorville.com or Naylorville.net or what's other common I've seen .vt.us, getting away from those that can either be easily spoofed or impersonated. Getting to a .gov, there's a certain amount of trust that comes with it and builds confidence. So interesting. I see the question from Jennifer. So there is a little bit of cost, I would say, associated with what you have to do to provide information. So the .gov domains are administered by the federal government. They're not like, you don't go to GoDaddy or someone like that to get a .gov. It is through, I believe, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. CISA handles .gov domain registration. So there's a little bit of work in proving who you are, which helps bring the reliability of it. But I don't believe there's a cost to register it. And once you have it, I don't believe it's not like renewing a domain like at GoDaddy where you have to pay $25 a year or whatever to keep SeanNaylor.com in force. David, you want to add more on that?
You pretty much know what I know on that one. I haven't dug deeply into it.
So not really any charge. The costs that do get incurred, and we'll probably cover this more when we get to that project, talking about depth, is moving your information, right? So if you're using Gmail email accounts, right, and you want to implement Naylorville.gov for Gmail, there may be a cost associated with working with Google to get that done. The big one is the migration of web content, right? So if you have a web server, web content, you're running it in, I don't know, Weebly or WordPress or something like that, moving that content to Naylorville.gov will likely have a cost associated with it. That's upfront. So, Kerwin, anything from your experience that care to add?
Yeah, I think the vulnerability management, the .gov is always the best decision. It does give you that added security and assurance, but the vulnerability management, and your team can speak to this a great deal as well. It's important. That's one of the main ways that bad actors get in and can take advantage of you. And it's, for the most part, an easy fix, right? Ensuring that your updates are done properly, timely. But it's that time that people just don't have an opportunity to do, and it can cause an issue.
So, David, go ahead and raise your hand, and then
Yeah.
we got something in the chat.
The basic switchover, just pointing the DNS at your new .gov domain, probably isn't all that complex, but it is a good time, as Sean mentioned, to look at your web presence and think about whether that's exactly what you want to carry over, or whether you want to use that opportunity to harden it or upgrade it or adjust it somehow.
Yep. So I see Tabby asked a question in the chat. Are there any grants available to help defray the migration costs? Yes, there currently are. We are under contract with a vendor for the first municipalities that signed up for this when we solicited probably a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago. We did the solicitation. They're moving, depending on how well that goes. There may be additional waves through the grant program to help. I think I'm gonna post it here for everyone. But if you go to the link that I put here where it says SLCGP ready, that page, like fourth paragraph down at the top, there's a contact link. Fill that form out, and Kerwin or one of the others from the team will get back to you, and we'll start scheduling at least exploratory meetings to figure out where you're at, what would be involved, and what maybe next steps could look like. All right, let's move forward on the slides. All right. MFA, multi-factor authentication, right? Most of us probably see this in our lives somewhere now, right? You do online banking, somewhere there's a challenge and response, right? That they want to, the simplest one is SMS text, right? You get a text message with a code, you enter the code in, and as long as the person logging in is the right person and they have their phone, it's a second step to confirm who you are. As I said here, right, it's an extra layer of protection. One of the things that is important is that passwords, especially nowadays, right? I'm no better than anyone else. I have reused passwords in certain environments. I probably have some very simplistic passwords from like the early days of the internet that I saved in a web browser, probably a Netscape Navigator, 20 something years ago. And those have been compromised. But if if it was something that I used routinely, they've been out there. People can use them to try. The longer we've been online, the more likely we have left little breadcrumbs of information behind about ourselves that can be used against us. Just the nature of it. And this is where, when I go to place an order log into my Cabela's account, I get challenged to say, hey, are you really who you are? Right. And it gives me that opportunity to receive a text message and a code and confirm who I am. So that is fundamentally where MFA is at. And then there are more robust ways of implementing it, like actual hardware tokens that can be used on your device. That is a project that is also, like we spoke of the .gov migration, for the first wave of interesting towns is moving forward. Kicked off here in just the last week. So, David, I know this one's near and dear to you, so I'm sure you got some stuff on it.
Well, so when you get into the third layer, it gets interesting, right? And you can get into something along the line of something you know, something you own, and something you are. And that's referring to maybe a password and a token, a hardware token, or some kind of the feds use something called a CAC card, which is a card with a chip embedded in it that has a reader on your hardware that can verify you, and then something you are could be a biometric indicator, right? So there are ways to add layers to this to make it even more complex and secure if you need to. So depending on what you are securing and how sensitive that is, you can think about how complex, I guess, for lack of a better term, to make it in order to get it as secure as possible.
Yep. Anything, Kerwin, that you'd like to add on to
No,
MFA?
I think we're right on the nose with that one.
All right. One thing I'd like to point out is Faith Tempest asked a question about an alternative when folks don't want to use a personal phone, right? So that's where the hardware token is a really good option. I would also, consider, like we do here at the state, is maybe then it's time to consider issuing a work phone, because my gut says that there is probably other work-related activities being done on the phone, not just MFA. And if that's the case, right, then you run the risk of public records requests and discovery and that kind of stuff. So
Well, the app would work as well, right? Depending on which piece of hardware you have installed in. So the app would work as well.
Yes. Yep. So those are alternatives. And that's all stuff that can be explored as part of the grant. We did not lock into a specific means of MFA. It's what fits based on both the technology of your environment and kind of the situation as far as what employees have access to. So we're already there. Perimeter security, moving us right along. Thank you, Kerwin. This is really about, I like to call it that fence, right? This is the perimeter. This is the think of, often think of it as firewalls, but it also can be like email protection and stuff like that. But the reality is that we need to be cognizant of the traffic that is on our networks, and it needs to be both ways, right? Often, traditionally, firewalls were used, right? You put them up and you block bad people from getting at you, right? And you said, oh yeah, we don't do business with anyone from North Korea, so we're going to block IP addresses from North Korea, or pick your favorite geopolitical entity. But now, right, it's like newer firewalls also have the ability to monitor what's leaving your premises, right? Leaving your organization. And this can be helpful in identifying when maybe some bad actor has gained access, because if all of a sudden there is lots of data or files being moved to somewhere in Russia, that's a red flag, right? So the firewalls can really serve as a core of a sound physical cybersecurity environment. And we have projects planned in our next iteration of the cybersecurity plan to offer the ability that we can have purchased and implemented on organizations' behalf, modern firewalls. David.
So the interesting part about firewalls and that detection capability is, if you know your infrastructure and you know the patterns of what normal looks like on your network, then you can set alerts for when things are abnormal. And that gives you an early indicator on where and how to respond to something that might be weird, but isn't an actual incident yet. And that's a good way to get ahead of the issues that you're dealing with something proactively instead of reacting to it. So it's a nice link up to have firewalls feeding into some kind of analytical system There's something called a Security Information and Event Monitoring System out there, and that's specifically to take that kind of data and make it available. And you can set that up through a managed services provider or do it in-house if you've got the technical capability and resources to do it. But again, pattern recognition, knowing what's normal and knowing what's outside of those bounds of normal is a huge early way to get at challenges before they become problems.
And a lot of these are to David's point, are subscription services. So you may be thinking, oh man, who's going to do that? I don't know how to do that. What do I know about a threat? That provider that you're working with your town can help you get a subscription service that will monitor, if you choose, 24/7 support that will notify you when there's something going on. So you're not sitting there with your phone in your lap waiting for the text from your intrusion detection system, but they will help you in finding a service that will assist you 24/7.
Good point.
So it's not all on you.
Yep, those are valid points. Thank you, gentlemen. Vulnerability management. So this is looking at ensuring that patches, fixes, updates to known issues are applied in a timely manner. Right? There's still this, I don't have it off the top of my head, but this staggering percentage of events, compromises that could have been avoided because organizations were just behind in their patching. It was a known vulnerability. It had been out there for sometimes months. It hadn't got patched, and it led to a compromise at the organization. And this is, it's unfortunate, and it can be also troublesome, right? I spent the majority of my career at transportation, and we had some systems that we were very reluctant to just blindly accept patches from the vendors because maybe that would break something that we were relying upon. So there's a fine line to walk there, but it's important to figure out and get those applied within a timely way. And whether that's you have folks that do that on staff, or whether you're working with a managed service provider for your town that, somebody that keeps track of your computer equipment for you, and that it's part of the agreement with them is to make sure that they're being done within a agreed upon window. David.
If you have, especially servers that are no longer supported by the vendor, update them. That's part of this too, right? And those unsupported servers can cause really interesting vulnerabilities to show up in your environment and allow bad guys to do annoying things. So that'd be one major comment here.
Yep. Kerwin, anything to add?
Yeah, and I know that it's hard sometimes with SCADA systems, right? Because they only go down quarterly for maintenance or service, or maybe not even that much, right? Their object is to continue to work over and over again. But those are where the threats are. So working with your SCADA provider or your IT provider or whomever takes care of your SCADA networks to ensure that the vulnerability management is up to date and there is a process in place is extremely important. Secondly, if an incident does occur, and I know that we all share insurance services through the league, but it is important to know that an investigation will be done. And besides the bad actors doing their bad acting and creating the incident, they're going to want to know from an insurance perspective, what is it that your municipality did to prevent this? Were you on top of your patching? Did you have a patch policy in place? Were you following that policy? Were you getting up our vulnerability patches on time and taking care of it? So you have a responsibility in this too, just not the vendors. And so please do not put vulnerability management on the back burner.
Good points. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's continue forward here. All right, .gov. we talked about this about .gov domains quite a bit in the intro. But it's when your website and your email is registered to Naylorville.gov, like we were saying earlier, there is a vetting process that you have to go through with CISA to get a registered domain. It makes it, there's a certain amount of, trust that comes from that. And it inherently reduces or is harder to impersonate domains that have a .gov extension. And so those two things are, I mean, we always want to build trust with our constituents. Right? That should be something that we strive for. And this is one of the ways, at least in the technology space, that can happen. Thoughts on domains, David? Just when you were on mute.
Yeah, I think you pretty much said it. The trust and confidence piece, the process to get vetted by CISA isn't just about giving your constituents that trust and confidence, but it's also a way of proving to yourself almost that you've stepped through some of the basics that CISA is looking for before they put a .gov domain against your municipality, right? So it's almost a self-assessment to a certain degree.
Yep, good point. Kerwin, anything to add on from your end?
So for me, you'll hear my theme over and over and over again. It's reducing risk, right? And the risk to your municipality. I always put myself in the seat of your mayor or your select board and make a decision from that perspective. And getting this .gov domain, it does bolster you and it does increase security. This is the other part. Take a look at the website get.gov. That's GET.gov. Get.gov. They're going to give you more information, and this website is sponsored by CISA, in finding that domain, to see whether or not it's available, but it's also giving you some information on why certifying your municipality to .gov is so important. So it's not just us saying it, right? It's the federal government, if you choose to trust it, just kidding, telling you why that is important.
I put the link in the chat, and it's a very helpful site to understand what's involved there. So how do these work together in phase 2, right? So we have multi-factor authentication helps protect who is accessing your environment. We have perimeter security, right? So that is on the edge of your network, and that is looking at traffic, those that are trying to come in and stuff that's trying to leave, to help manage risk there. We have vulnerability management. So those devices within your network are being kept up to the latest patches and updates to ensure they're as resilient as possible. And then we have .gov, which is more about building trust, but verifying the organization, its website, and its email, right? And so these work together to stop the most common and automated attacks, right? So often the implementation of these 4 can go a long way to reducing your risk. It's not the end all be all, because we're going to explore next week even more projects or opportunities and focus areas around cybersecurity, but these are really foundational pieces. So, David, thoughts?
The integration is what makes them all stronger together.
Yes.
And, with the first 3 we talked about, these 4 and the group that's coming next week, that goes through the whole cycle of what we recommend you guys really think about for the municipalities. And we're here to help you think through it, right? I think this is a good spot to talk about Sean's around the state tour of sitting down and doing assessments with towns and potentially acting as a non-partisan, that's not right, a non-financially interested consultant potentially, right? To give you some input that doesn't necessarily have a profit stream attached to it. So that's
Yeah.
a really cool service that we can bring to the table as well.
I just came up with a graphic that we will have in the next one for Sean's around the state tour. I can
Oh,
see it
geez.
now.
Oh, geez.
That will be a good one.
It's not all
Yes.
on Sean. Spencer could theoretically be
Oh, his
part
picture
of that
will be
Sean,
in it too.
right?
His picture will be in it too.
And or the new person will
Yeah,
come on.
depends on the
Yep.
depends on the level of interest and stuff as to how quickly Sean can get around. So, but I'm going to try and do as many as I can over the course of the next couple months. Excellent. Let's keep moving forward because I think we're going to end a little early today, and we're going to get to do something that I wanted to do in the other sessions, and we haven't had time. Assessment. Oh, look at this! What a segue, Mr.
I was just ahead of
Kaiser.
you.
Perfect. Oh, so everything we've talked about links to what we call the cybersecurity pillars, which is what I'm going to show you in a minute. Those pillars directly map to projects that we've identified in our cybersecurity plan for the state and local cybersecurity grant program, SLCGP. This is all a mouthful, but what this means is that we have an opportunity for the state to, through the grant, the state receives the grant funding. We get the services and administer them on your behalf to help you improve. So you're not having to do grant writing, you're not having to do grant applications, you're not have to do grant monitoring, reporting. Those responsibilities are falling on the state. But in order to do that, one of the first things we have to do as a requirement of the grant is to do an assessment, right? And this is regardless of the grant requirement, this is like what should happen first, right? So as we work with municipalities, understanding where you're at so we can help guide you to what the next 2 or 3 steps should be, has to be based on like sound information. And that's what this assessment does. It allows us to sit down with you. It is, we have what I've developed call a self-assessment that we share with you in advance. So you can kind of get a sense of like what the nature of the questions are going to be and how to be prepared. What I've been trying to do is have a brief call with folks beforehand and then set up an in-person meeting. I would much rather come sit down with you, have an opportunity to see your environment, to, have more of a conversation that goes through and really gets at where you are, what protections you have in place, what are the next ones that would be good to apply, answer questions you have. Often we're as much having just a conversation and kind of, making sure everyone's on the same page as we are assessing. We don't do scorecards, right? You're not going to get a grade from us and then you can compare it to your peers, right? This is not a competitive assessment. It's purely how do we know what to do next to help you assessment. So that's really the next step in the process and why the assessment, we keep bringing it up as we go through this. You want to slide forward, Kerwin?
Okay. Did David want to add anything to that? Or no, we're good.
I introduced it.
He was the predecessor. Right. We keep coming back to where we've tried to shape this in a way that reduces the burden. It's not burden free, but we understand that municipalities are limited in resources, limited in funding, limited in time. So we're trying to do this in a way where we're taking on some of that responsibility on your behalf to help make it possible to move the needle on this for everyone. And we're trying to stick to just the practical, and back to Mr. Kaiser's equation of risk, right? Likelihood is often one of the things you consider, right? What's You don't spend all your energy on the thing that has like a 0.001% chance of occurring. You put your energies into the thing that has a more likely opportunity of occurring. So this is all meant to say that really we're trying to come at this from a practical perspective that acknowledges the limitations in municipalities. So in the chat, Jennifer Lestat, is there a time limit for when we should start the assessment? Yes, no, maybe. I think this is, I don't know what the next slide is. But this is a good time to talk about the grant program. The SLCGP is funded, has 4 federal years of funding, starting with federal fiscal year 2022 and ending in federal fiscal year 2025. Each one of those years had a 4-year period of performance, right? So for FY22, we're still making investments using the FY22 monies because we're in the last year of that period of performance, of that 4th year. I give that background because there was, when the legislation was enabled, there was an increasing match requirement each year. So year 1, there was 10%, year 2 is 20, year 3 is 30, and year 4 is 40%. The state of Vermont received a match waiver for year 1. So in theory, in practice, the work that we're doing right now, and will be for the next few months, requires no additional funding from either the state or the municipality. We have secured some state funding for the match for the next fiscal year, which we're working on. So this is the long answer to say, while there is no, because I think if I remember correctly, 25 would get us to like September 30 of 2029 is like the end. I've seen David nod, so my math works out. So we are, in essence, 3+ years away from the money, any kind of money, expiring. So there's not that, but the longer you wait, the deeper you go, the more likelihood there will be some sort of match funding, whether that's on the state, the municipality, or whom, will be kind of determined on a case-by-case basis. But that's a long way to say that there is some incentive to probably do it this summer, right? If you can get in and get it done this summer, the likelihood of being able to get some projects applied to your municipality at no cost to you or the state is fairly good right now. We've also applied for an extension, so we're hoping that the FY22 monies will be extended a little bit, so we will be able to get a little bit more mileage out of them. You're welcome, Jennifer. So key takeaways, right? Passwords are never enough. Firewalls, perimeter protection, building that digital fence around your environment, it still is important. Patching, doing updates to ensure that known vulnerabilities, known weaknesses are addressed is critical. The trust that comes from a .gov domain is important and helps with security. And like David said probably a few slides ago, right? The four of these together really are a strong defense. All right. I mean, these are the kind of the core ones that if you get these 4 done, you've made significant progress. So what other thoughts do you have, David?
I remember when I showed you this, no, I shouldn't say it that way. When you showed this to me and I brought back the whole pyramid structure, right, of building a foundation, and as you go up,
Yep.
it becomes more, you build a stronger overall presence in the security domain, but maybe the higher levels of the pyramid also get a little more complicated and take a little more effort to put into place. So we've covered that over this set of slides, and I think that's still a truism that I'd apply to it.
Yep, I would agree. It is the next level of complexity to accomplish these compared to the phase one stuff and commitment, right? Kerwin, anything else? Anything to add?
Yeah, I like the third bullet. That sticks out to me the most. And again, going back to risk, where knowing where your weaknesses are and how they should be addressed. Now, let me tell you why that's important. First of all, you're going to have a responsibility. And if you go back to last week, we talked about having the cybersecurity person being responsible uh, within your municipality. But when you've done the assessment and you've identified where those weaknesses are, you have to understand that now you can place, I don't want to use a word like liability, but you can let your select board know, hey, these are the problems that we have addressed, right? We've had a professional assessment done. These are the standards in which these vulnerabilities, meaning the problems that we've addressed. This is where we know exactly why they're wrong. And what are we going to do in order to remediate that, right? So is it going to be, we're going to utilize some of the advantages of the SLCGP program once afforded? Absolutely. I hope that you do. Or if those if those opportunities for improvement are not within a project or in a project scope, you're going to have to go out on your own and do that. So that's going to have to be budgeted by your select board. This helps you understand what those things are, and you can build a report card or a roadmap, so to speak, on what needs to be done. It's very, very important. So if an incident does occur, you don't have to say, and you go through that investigation with your insurance company, you can say, hey, look, we knew that this was a problem. These are the things that we were doing to address them. The vulnerabilities or the bad actors still did it, but we were working towards it. We did due diligence and then tried to implement due care in order to remediate. So keep that in mind.
Thank you. All right. Why the SLCGP? Right? We're here to help provide the means to better understand your risk, identify those gaps, help to fill those gaps, mitigate them, which will give you a stronger and more prepared environment and hopefully be more resilient over time first. But I also feel like we're taking a community approach by which we're also sharing knowledge and experience that maybe the state has that municipalities may not have just through scale and responsibility, and just trying to have an open dialogue and collectively raise everyone's both understanding and hopefully resilience to cyber threats. David, Kerwin, anything to add?
In the end, it's free and or deeply discounted resourcing to get at problem sets that are plaguing everybody. So it's hard to say no.
And the program and I brought up last week, so excuse the redundancy for those that have been back before. It is not you won't suffer grant fatigue by going through the SLCGP program. I understand with municipalities you have grants for everything from installing fire hydrants to police cars, and now you're like, oh, now I'm gonna have to manage a cyber grant. I understand your stress. But in the scheme of things, in regards to grants, this is a fairly easier grant to deal with. One of the true pillars of the grant program is to help alleviate some of those security costs, right? For a couple different reasons. One, if we can reduce the cost for some of those items and it will prevent you from saying no to fixing these things, right? Especially around your SCADA systems and network security. So it's easier for you to say yes if you're like, oh, well, this is covered by the SLCGP program, and then we can utilize those monies to do other things within our community, like build libraries and fix potholes and do all that other stuff. Whereas now cybersecurity isn't that problem that you have to deal with, this expensive problem, but also educating the communities on things like vulnerability management and coming up with vulnerability management tools that can help solely prevent a bad actor from getting into your network. But we're all here to help you do that. And again, getting scheduled for your assessment and learning from it, I think, is very, very important.
Okay, so next slide. Q&A. This has been good. We've been getting them in the chat as we've gone, but if there are other questions, because I do have one other item to share for folks that's not part of the presentation. I want to make sure we don't miss any questions. Oh, while people are thinking, I'm going to do a share. So, Kerwin, David, can you guys see that?
We
share?
can.
All right. I'm using you as proxies for everyone else. So, the presentations, the webinar series has been built around concept that I've been working on called the cybersecurity pillars, right? It's like 13 core areas that progress in maturity. When you should receive a thank you for attending email, of which one of the attachments is the relevant pages from the pillars document for the ones we talked about today. So as you can see, I have multi-factor authentication up. And this gets into a little bit more depth on it, but it's not in a technical context. It talks about the different ways of doing multi-factor authentication, right? What's important, the three things of knowledge, possession, and inherence. Why it should be non-negotiable. Two of the things that I like about this, right, is we've established these kind of like, even within each of these areas, there is a maturity scale that can be applied. So we've established maturity levels, right? And ideally, what we would like to see is across the 13 disciplines, if you get to level 2 in each one of these areas, you're going to be a pretty solid organization, right? But it gives you an idea of like what's level 1 stuff versus level 2 versus level 3. And just as a way of understanding that there are, right, you can put the Google app on your phone, right, and use Google Authenticator and for email, and that's good, but it may not be as good as using the hardware tokens in your organization. The other piece that comes with this is that we have identified there are three core, I won't say core, there are three relatively common standards in use in the US for cybersecurity, and that is CISAs, Center for, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agencies, CPGs, which are cross-sector performance goals, NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I believe I can always mess that up, but they have their CSF standards, and then the Center for Internet Security Controls. So as organizations mature, this won't mean a lot to you now, but as you start to work maybe with vendors and stuff like that, you can see how this maps back in your organization is actually when you do some of these efforts, what it's helping you to approve per the standards. But the last column is the one I really wanted to show, is that for each one of these, we have identified at least one of the state and local cybersecurity grant program offerings, which projects. So on our list of the 19 projects, well, 4 currently and 19 pending, project 2 is the project that would help you with implement multi-factor authentication. So perimeter security. I'm going to bounce down here. We have 3 projects, right? SCADA security hardening and evaluation, protecting the modern perimeter, malware and monitoring, and protecting the modern perimeter web application firewall. If we just sent this to you and said, hey, which project do you want to participate in? I think this would probably be like, you wouldn't even respond because how do you know? And this is another reason I think the assessment is helpful. We can sit down and at the end, we can really help map out for you which projects, which areas should be focus areas for you to make improvement on. And so I just wanted to share that. You should be seeing that with the thank you email, and I've been wanting to show that, but we've run out of time. So I'll pause for any questions. Excellent.
It's okay to ask questions. Were there any questions in regards to the SLCGP program and how we can start a conversation with you if we haven't already?
And I think you can take yourself off mute if you don't want to use the chat.
Or just raise your hand and I'll click you off and mute.
Oh, there's that too.
We were
All right.
so thorough that there are no questions.
Yep. Excellent. Well, maybe we'll have more next time, but it was good. I liked having the questions throughout the presentation. That helped. So
Did we answer the recordings question in the Q&A section?
I did early on.
Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, no, Tabby posted that in the beginning, and I told her how we're waiting for them to be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and the links will be available in the ready.vermont.gov site once we finally get them uploaded. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Hope to see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.